getting things in order here. Oh, goodness. So much is going on with the world. I mean, so much going on with the world. They're talking about, and I've got the channel open to live chat. So, in any case, if you are a tuber who's got enough subscribers and everything to qualify for live chat, by all means, So, I've got the two-way chat turned on. So, they're talking about if WW3 happens and there's a nuclear WAR which wipes out most of the crops and everything, that mankind can still get by on seaweed. So they'd go under the sea, start snatching up that seaweed, and make those Soylent Green cakes for you. Yum. Yum. So, okay. My other smartphone, is being a little bit of a smart aleck phone. I appreciate all of those of you that prayed for me today. Today was a solid day. Today was a solid day of nothing but warfare prayer until the thing that was attacking me left. And I know one of you the other day said, one of you in the comments section said that you saw a shadowy figure standing behind me in the video. That's not too impossible because mi mano derecha is kind of a carrier for that thing. And he went to the store for me and dropped off uh, my lunch. You know, he acts like, he's a good friend. I'm sure he is, but he's always grumpy. And usually, after he leaves, it's something that I have to spiritually chase out of the room. So what I'm saying is I'm not doubting what you were saying about seeing a shadowy figure uh stand behind me. So, hi Freddie. And Charles Lawson, who's a very credible, used to be Baptist pastor. He's kind of in between a Baptist and a Pentecostal, except that he doesn't believe in that palabra jabber, jibby jabber, talking in tongues. And neither do I. When the apostles talked in the many languages, they were real languages that they were talking. And when it says you need an interpreter, if you go into a church and they're speaking French, and the pastor's like, "Comment allez-vous? Très bien, merci. Il est très bien, mon père," and he's praising God. "You're very great, my father," in French, but you don't speak French, so you ask somebody next to you to interpret. And the person says, well, the pastor said, Il est très bien, mon père. And he's saying God is very great. God's very good. That's how interpretation of tongues works. It's not where somebody says palaver jabber, jibby jabber, and blah, 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 you know, and then somebody in a purple zoot suit, like the last place I went to, stands up and says, "Thus says the Lord," rainbows and lollipops and unicorns and all of this other stuff, which makes believers look flaky, you know, makes believers look flaky. So some of the big store chains are closing down stores in neighborhoods with the high degree of theft or low profitability. So that means that more people in certain neighborhoods are going to have food deserts, where you have 90-year-old women riding on a bus to a different city trying to get their medication. It's a sad day and age. And see, that's the whole thing. That's the whole thing about our society is people figured that this whatever you want to do, whenever you want to do, however you want to do it is very liberating, to go up to a total stranger at a Home Depot and put a bucket over their head and smack them in the back of the head and then run off. That's very liberating to them. But then when the store winds up closed because the store got sued because they didn't have a security guard following you around to keep you from putting buckets on people's heads, then, it strikes home, the long-term consequences of this stuff. But, whoever thinks that far ahead anymore? So, Icelandic fault line has awakened after 800 years of being dormant. So, I saw this video of this person standing over top of an inactive volcano, and they got the bright idea to throw a boulder over the side of it, and they punctured a hole in the little skin that was over top of the lava. And sure enough, man, that thing started bubbling up like oil out of a well, man. You know, people do the dumbest stuff, throw rocks off of a highway, and then it goes through the windshield and wipes out some pregnant lady, and then they get to court and they're all crybaby that they didn't think that anything like that was going to happen, that to them it was more or less a video game, and they wanted to throw rocks at cars. And these are grown men, these are grown men, 18, 19, 20-year-old men. By the time I was 20, I had held a full-time job for 6 years, living away from my parents by the time I was 20. I was picking up trash, I was driving the truck, I was doing whatever landscaping jobs I could get. I went to college at night and took business administration and landscaping. And fam, I do not believe this is a new thing. The kids saying their parents have to put them through college. That's a relatively new conscript because In my generation, you pulled yourself up by your own bootstraps, and there was nobody going to wipe your butt for you or anything like that. And that door did not swing both ways with my parents. Once I was outie, I was outie. And I made the crucial mistake of not going next door to my neighbor's house who loved me like a son and would have rented me a room and made sure that I became the doctor that I wanted to be instead of winding up on the street, hanging out with prostitutes and every other god awful thing working on a garbage truck. So, biggest news lately is the thing down at the border, and the feds have gone down there to cut up the razor wire and take it down because see now they're out in the open. This admin said there was nothing that they could do about the border, and that the $5 billion that Trump wanted to spend was too much money, and they've spent far beyond that, fam. 6 million people who've been given $3,000 and $5,000 gift cards and a free phone and a free airline ticket and free hotel stays. They've spent more than the money that Donald Trump wanted to spend. And if you look at them, most of them are military aged men, very slim and fit, you know, very few families, very few. And the one guy, when they pointed the camera at him and asked him who he was, he said, "You're going to know very soon who I am." And he turned out to be a T cell leader. So I can't say the whole T word because of this platform. But uh, in any case, this stuff is going to come back to bite America in the ass. I can tell you. I can tell you. We're going to be just like France, that we're not going to be able to defend ourselves because we're going to be so busy taking care of all of the stuff in the streets and everything with these people coming in who have no intention, they have no intention of blending in. So I believe that uh, I believe that after the rapture happens, which is why they're importing people right now, because the government knows the rapture is going to happen soon, and they're fomenting this alien thing and all of this other stuff to explain the rapture way when it happens. And they're going to replace, the 70 million or so people that get raptured with this flood of people coming into the country. And I tell you that Islam is going to be the law of the land, and Sharia law is going to be the enforcement arm of Islam. And for those of you that get left behind, you know, if you don't convert, it's going to be, because that's the one major religion that decapitates people. And Islam means submit. So, and the gematria of the word Allah is 66. So I believe that it's going to be some combination of the beast, Antichrist, and Allah to come up with 666. And that W, in the black flag that means Allah, that looks like a wireless bra. I believe that they're going to work that into the One World logo, and people are going to think that W means one world, and no, it's going to mean Allah. And I've already seen it in dreams. I've had some incredible dreams, and I believe that in the future, I do believe in the future that Russia is going to take Alaska back, because they say that they were cheated in the 1800s when they sold Alaska to America for $7 million, not knowing about all of the oil and all of the other good stuff. So if you're living in Alaska, I would just keep my eye on your back door, as what's her name said, and keep your powder dry and keep your bag packed. So let me see what else. I believe very possibly also that in the future, few years from now, maybe a few months from now, that Texas will secede from the Union and go back to being the Republic of Texas. They'll probably call it like the Republic of New Texas, with Donald Trump as their president. I can pretty much guarantee you that this time around for America, it's going to be a woman. I don't think it'll be Nikki Haley. I think very possibly that it'll be another Democrat. It'll be the governor of California and Michelle Obama. And his being trans could actually work to their benefit, because not only would you have an African American woman, you know, but you would have an African American trans woman, and that would seal the deal if Michael comes out. Michael Robinson Obama, with the fake family, with the two girls with their real parents walking behind them. In videos, you see their, like when they go to amusement park, you'll see the real parents walking behind them. All that stuff is made up. It's all made up. In the election is not going to make one bit of difference. And like I said, I myself do not plan to vote this time, because the train is too far down the tracks. And if I vote for the wrong people, I'll just get put on somebody's watch list. So that's all it's telling me for the news. But anytime you have tyranny, which is what we're in now, we're in a season of treason and tyranny. But the fact of the matter is that a lot of brainwashed people are good with it, because they figure rather than having a bloodbath, it's just easier and quicker to hand over America to a global third party that they can't vote for. They won't ever be able to vote for these people and get them out of office. Klaus Schwab and his little demonic little helper, who wants everybody to drink cockroach milk and eat crickets and eat seaweed after the BOMB drops, because after all, they want to depopulate the world, and they want the climate to cool down. They actually want a nuclear winter of sorts, and they also want the full EMP effect, so that they can open this portal with CERN. And CERN, I believe, has already done massive damage to the Earth because now they found out that the Earth's core is pulled out of place. And CERN makes a fantastic magnetic field. And it does several things. With CERN, they can cause a ripple in the Earth's ionosphere and push the ionosphere out into space. Now, the danger of pushing the ionosphere out into space is that the solar winds can catch away the Earth's water supply, and then we would be like Mars, which has no magnetic core. The magnetic core is what keeps Earth's water on Earth, and I personally believe that with the pyramids and stuff that they've seen on Mars, that they're going to find out that mankind probably came from Mars and effed Mars up and then built their rockets and came to Earth because they found computer parts from centuries ago, this gear set from centuries ago, and it's finely crafted and it's thousands of years old. And the one area they were exploring is horrendously radioactive still. So they believe that all of this stuff happened long ago and that everybody BOMBED each other out of existence. And now we're starting on the second time doing the same dumb thing. And see, the way I would keep peace, the way that I would keep peace is that any idiot who wanted to BOMB another culture with a nuke would be considered an international criminal automatically and be rounded up and locked away where they couldn't hurt anybody. But they get up and they make a speech about these people are the wrong people and these people are dangerous and these people, and we got to do this first before they do that first. And because America has absolutely decided to spit in the face of God and ride the abomination out to the worst consequence. And fam, whenever in any culture where the children get corrupted, God does not let that civilization go farther than the children being corrupted. There's no reason to be, because the children are the next generation. You corrupt the children, you corrupt the whole generation. So right now we have a mix of 50-50 people, 50% of people in America that love God and are on God's side. And see the other people, like these people who say they're from the satanic temple and they don't really believe in Satan, which is a lie, because they stood around and ripped up a Bible and said, Hail Satan, you know. So they lie about the after school class that they have for children that's just going to teach children harmless humanism. You know, humanism is nothing but socialism, which is nothing but communism with a little bit of lipstick and perfume on it. That's all it is. And for those of you that are foolish enough, you Mike Moores that think that communism is so wonderful, go to Venezuela or someplace where they're eating dogs and they're eating food out of garbage trucks that the garbage trucks don't even have to dump all their load because they have people running behind the garbage truck trying to snatch the rotten potatoes and pieces of leftover cake out of the garbage before it gets dumped off. So, and I've seen that for myself because when I drove a garbage truck, I looked back in the mirror and one of my helpers had his face all puffed up and he had found a box of donuts floating in the garbage water and he was packing those donuts in his face as fast as he could. And I stopped the truck and I went back to see what was going on. And I told him, I said, why didn't you tell me before we got going to get you an egg sandwich and a cup of coffee? Hey, how you doing? Get you a coffee and an egg sandwich and something good, before we got going. Now I'm in the route. I can't stop. But the guy just eating these donuts that had been floating in the garbage water. And I know what that's all about because when I was a kid, I used to pick up Congressional Deli in Rockville, Maryland, next to the airport where the congressmen used to fly out of their private airport. And back then, you could pick up the garbage, dragging the barrel through the restaurant where people were eating at their tables. And I was a young little kid passing by all these people. I hadn't eaten for like 3 days. And the smell of the food and watching the people enjoy their food was driving me crazy. I was walking past their tables like, you know, wishing and hoping and thinking and praying, as Dionne Warwick would say. And so the man who owned the store noticed, and he made me this big, thick tuna sandwich, ice cold tuna on thick Texas toast, wrapped in wax paper. Back then, they had wax paper, which was parchment paper with wax dripped onto it. No plastic back then. I'm talking more than a half a century ago. And so I was so thrilled to have the sandwich and I was cherishing it. And so I threw the garbage in the truck with my barrel and I walked around and I opened up the door of the truck. And those trucks, they all shake. They sit there clanking and blanking and shaking. And I opened up the door and I put the sandwich on top of the dash. And before I could hop up in the truck, the sandwich slid down the dash, opened up out of the wax paper wrap, and plopped on the garbage truck floor, face down on the garbage truck floor. So I started to cry. I was so frustrated and angry and everything. These big hot tears started to roll down, but I was too ashamed to go into the store and tell the man what had happened. So I was blubbering. I was like, and I found a piece of cardboard in the garbage, and I picked the one piece of bread up, and I took the cardboard and I wiped the mayonnaise off the bread, and I put that on the dirty seat of the garbage truck. Then I put the cardboard under the other part of the sandwich, under the tuna fish. I flipped that over, and it had garbage, mud, and rocks and hair and everything uh, in the tuna. But I was too desperate to eat something. So with my dirty garbage truck hands, I took my gloves off because I always wore gloves. I knew other men that would pick up garbage barehanded, and then somebody would give them an apple or something, and they would sit there and eat the apple with their garbage truck dirty hands that had just been picking up somebody's diapers or cat throw up or kitty litter, you know. So I picked up all of the, hey, Lisa, don't forget to like and subscribe, please. And if you feel like helping Pop out with some diapers or old people piddle pads, my Amazon link is in the description. God will bless you for it. Be a blessing, get a blessing. So I picked up all the dirt and hair and mud and everything from the sandwich, and I slapped it together, and I was like, sucker, you're going down. And I ate the sandwich. I had to be very careful not to close my teeth all the way and bust my tooth on a rock. But I ate the garbage sandwich, so I knew what it was like to be desperately hungry. And I lived in a halfway house with drug addicts and hey, Laura, I lived in a halfway house with drug addicts, and one guy was a scout during the Vietnam War. Crazy as all get out, because what his job was to at nighttime was to slither along the jungle floor and go up behind some North Viet Cong and then quietly go to the next guy, and he had come back from Nam with this terrible STD, and just as crazy as all get out. And so one night, and he used to lay in his room in the all raw, and I just walked on by like with my hand up against my head, not looking in or not saying anything. But one night, this German guy and this Native American guy saw, I forget what his name was. Oh gosh. Anyway, they dragged him off. They dragged him off and did the down low with them. And as they were dragging him off, he knocked on my door one time. Will, you know? Oh, Clifton. He had an unusual name, Clifton. Just as kooky and like I said, they almost didn't let him back into America because they didn't have any cure for the STD that he had. So these two other guys got with him on the low, and that was my life living in the boarding house. And I used to take my console stereo and push it up against the door at nighttime, and I always slept with my back against the wall with one eye open, and a pew pew uh, next to my bed. I've always had a pew 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 next to my bed ever since I was a young man. Always had the pew pew next to my bed. So, and that was the only way I could sleep. Back to the wall, one eye open, pew pew nearby, with the stereo pushed up against the door. And two of the men, two of the men were in the kitchen. They had a fight over some squirrel meat and hot dogs. And I opened up the refrigerator, and there were two squirrels floating in ice water, ready to be dressed and cooked by these two men. One looked like Jack Nicholson, and the other guy, they looked like they were out of Deliverance, the two guys out of Deliverance with the rotten teeth and all that. And so they were cooking horse. They were cooking horse in a spoon in the kitchen. And I came in, I was really sad. I was going through a lot of things. My girlfriend had just run over our baby boy with our own car. And she called me over at my parents' house, and Ann told me that Timmy was gone. And I said, "What happened?" She said, "The car." And he was playing in the driveway. She was babysitting these other brats. And she went in to get some laundry detergent because she was doing laundry on the side and babysitting children and all this stuff. She went in to borrow some laundry soap from grandma's, and Timmy was playing in the driveway. And the other little brats pulled the car into drive, and it just crept up on him and sat over top of him for like 15 minutes. And then she didn't know he was under the car. So she got in the car and put it in reverse and backed over him the second time. So by that time, he was good and gone because our car was a 67 Chevrolet Crestwood station wagon that weighed a good 2 tons, all steel bumpers, you know. And she called me at my parents, and I said, "Oh God, oh God." I crumpled like dirty laundry. I said, "Oh God, my boy is gone. My boy's gone." You know, my parents never helped me get up off the floor. They never patted me on the back. They never said, "We're sorry for your loss." Nothing. Just as cold as ice. Just as cold as ice. And I was good to my parents. I never was huggy kissy with them. I always called my father Buck and I called my mother Alice. And I never said mom or dad or, you know, and when things would get rough around the house, and my sister one time got angry over something my mother did and held a knife at my belly when I was 11 years old, threatening to gut me like a fish because my sister gave my mother $20 for rent. My mother blew it off like big deal, handed me the, yeah, thanks, Laura. That was how many years ago? That was that was 50 years ago. So I'll see him in heaven when I get there. That was 50 years ago. Hurts like it was yesterday. I got a little tear here, but it's therapeutic for me to talk about it rather than just let it build up. And I appreciate all of you that pray for me, you know. But I was never huggy kissy with my parents. And when my sister would go to stab me, or my father would go to put a cigarette out on me, or knock me down the basement stairs and beat the crap out of me, I always had money on me. And I started to leave home when I was 6. And my parents had the cops bring me back one time. And then after that, they were like, he'll come back if he comes back. My father always had this expression. He said, we'll raise the ones that live. He said, we'll raise the ones that live, talking about his kids, like we were a box of lab rats. But my father got saved. He's in heaven. I was with him. I was with him when he passed, telling him I loved him and holding his hand and patting his hand. Very difficult because we never reconciled. Then I called my family at 11:38 that night, told them Buck had passed. They never said thank you, kiss my ass, go to hell. Or Will, we live 2 blocks from the hospital. Would you like to come and stay in your old room? And perhaps it's not a good idea that you drive the car after just seeing your father off, and none of that. So I opened up my pack of of Ritz crackers and popped the top of my Coca-Cola. And Buck was lying there stone purple with the machine going, psh, psh, which was the creepiest thing, like Star Wars. Psh, psh. And my family didn't come to visit him while he was on life support. And they came one time to make the decision about whether or not to turn him off when things got dire, which they said, yes, unplug him. But the technician did the oddest thing. He looked at my whole family group there, and he picked up the hose going to Buck's, intubation, and he bent the hose and stopped the air for a second, and the machine went blah, 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 blah. The alarm went off on the machine, and the guy looked at us like, don't you go accidentally knocking the plug out of the wall because the unit has batteries, and don't you accidentally go stepping on his oxygen tube. So, but while Buck was lying there stone raw, and I told the hospital, I said, that's my father. You got to cover him up with a sheet or something. They said, well, it's easier to work on him while he's in the raw. And I said, well, what do you talk about working on him? You put in a DNR. I said, you put in a DNR on him, which means you're going to leave him there like rotting meat. What are you talking about doing anything to work on him or not? And it's very compelling, because when the body starts to shut down and the kidneys shut down, and this is adult conversation, and I will be labeling this as adult content. But when the body starts to shut down and the kidneys shut down, the body takes the urine and it starts to pump it under the skin. And you get these great big bubbles of urine on the legs and the arms and stuff. And the face gets about the size of a pumpkin. Horrible, slow way to go. And I believe that's inhumane, because when I was intubated, I was fully aware of what was going on as they worked on me with no anesthesia, no painkiller. And oh my God, did it hurt. I remember what the people said and did, and they did it incorrectly. That's why my voice is so raspy, is when they intubated me, they nicked my vocal cords. And I used to sing in church and all, but now the way my throat and everything feels, and the raspiness of my voice, that's out the window. But I gave Buck a good send off, patting his hand, telling him I loved him. And all of a sudden, I felt this rush, like through the window of these things. And they got Buck, and they right back out through the window, right through me. And for a split second, we were all together, Buck and these heavenly beings, whatever you want to call them. We were for 1 second, and it was like I got an epiphany of knowledge about the afterlife and DEATH and all that. And I wasn't scared anymore, which is good, because when it came my time and I had the accident, I wasn't scared. And I saw this beautiful, beautiful mountainous throne. And I've only described it a few times. And I was being handed off like a slaughtered animal. And then all of a sudden, I was grabbed back to the world with the machine pumping my lungs up and down. And they give you what's called a paralytic, so that you can't, because the natural thing is to try and pull the tube out of your throat so you can breathe. So they give you a paralytic so that you can't move, you know, and you just sit there and pee and crap on yourself, and the fluid in your lungs builds up and starts to gurgle. It's a horrible, horrible situation. And you're looking at the people over top of you, looking at you like you're a science experiment. And it's like being under the water in a pond, and you're looking up at the people, and you have the sense that they're fully alive and you're not. Because I had more tubes in me than a 73 Chrysler with California emissions. I had tubes everywhere. And when the lady pulled the tube out and de-intubated me, I looked up like that Star Trek episode Space Seed. I looked up at her and I went, why? Why? She knew exactly what I meant. Why would you bring me back to this hell on earth? She said, because we were obligated to, because there was no directive, you know. But the interesting thing was, uh, even before my family knew whether my father was going to survive or not, you know, the good, wonderful, caring people that they were, his cats went through the house going, meow, 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 looking for Buck, going from room to room to room, looking for Buck. So instead of taking them to a foster home or anything, my relatives took the two cats to the vet and told the vet, shame on him. They told the vet the situation, and that daddy wasn't coming home, and the pets were suffering, so they might as well euthanize them. And the one cat was very intelligent. Uh, his name was Musette, because when I got him, I didn't know he was a boy. I wasn't into picking up a cat and spreading its down low and checking for its dinkleberry and all. I wasn't into that. It looked and acted effeminate, so I named it Musette. And when it didn't like its food, it would crawl on the floor on its belly, and then it would flop over like that next to the food and just look at the food like, I can't believe you're going to feed me that crap again. Very intelligent animal. And the other cat I had gotten from the dump, it was an orange tabby, and it was mean. And I opened up the door of the garbage truck, and the cat came in and it sat on the top of the seat. And we're riding along, bouncing along in the garbage truck. And anytime I would turn and look at the cat would go, like, Will, I hate you. And I want to just grab the steering wheel and wreck the truck and, jump on you and claw your eyes out. But I don't want to be in the dump anymore. So that was the situation with the other cat. So I brought him by my father's, you know, and my father took the cat and loved on it and everything. And, like I said, while he was in the hospital recovering, they took the cat and put it to sleep. Probably because it was so vicious, because it was a one man cat. Even when you went to try and feed it, you had to put the food on the plate and then quickly put the plate down, because I learned the hard way. If you brought the food down and started to scrape it into the plate, the cat was food aggressive, and it would put its claws over your hand like, don't touch my food, man. I'm serious about my food. And I was like, I'm trying to put more food on your plate, you know? And it was like, don't touch my food, Will. I'll scratch the, you know. And it repaid my father by using behind the sofa as a bathroom. It had gone behind the sofa so many times that the wooden floor had curled up. And when they took up the carpet, they had to cut another piece of wood and nail it down to the floor because the cat had used behind the sofa rather than going outside, you know. So in any case, you know, I left and drove back wherever I was living at the time. Yeah, kittens are funny. Oh yeah, I was living with a I was living with a Japanese lady in Wheaton Glenmont near the arms production company Vitro Engineering, and Vitro used to employ this whole area. They employed this whole area, and I had an Indian friend who was very smart. And when he was still a kid, he called Vitro up and he said something like, "I'm 13 or 14 right now, and I'm coming to work for you. I want to be an engineer, and I want to know what courses to take to qualify working for your company." And like every year, this guy would call Vitro and tell him, "I'm coming." And man, when they hired him at Vitro, they hired him like halfway up the ladder because the guy was a stone genius, a stone genius. And I worked for an Indian company making circuit boards for the space industry and all. And culturally, man, it was working your butt off at a very prestigious job, pretty much the highest pressure job I'd ever had in my life. I loved the job. I loved everybody at the job, but I could not keep my blood pressure in line. Wound up out the door a couple of times going to the hospital to get knocked out with a shot. Because if you made a mistake on a circuit board, it meant that somebody up in a rocket someplace orbiting the Earth was going to DIE. So you had to be very precise on everything. And we always had magnifying lenses looking at the circuit boards, and you had to test them. And I was the one who took the scribble from the fax machine where a scientist would order a circuit board. It's 12 layer, it's going to be gold or silver. And they don't use tin lead in circuits anymore for the dumbest reason because some child might grab the circuit board and put it in its mouth and get lead poisoning, you know. So that's called ROHS. It's a industry standard of no lead. But when you make a circuit board with silver, silver migrates over time. So you're flying along in your airplane and you have your silver circuit board in your plane, and the little fingers start to crawl towards each other. And then when they make contact and that circuit board shorts out at 40,000 feet, you're screwed. So they constantly have to, where something was no problem, no hurt, no foul, tin lead circuit boards, they make them out of silver, and it's called silver migration. And the silver sends out fingers towards each other. The circuit board shorts out, and then you have a plane or a rocket or something. Boom, you know. But they don't talk about that. They don't talk about that. It's it's this wacky wokeness of the tail wagging the dog, where, you know, heaven forbid somehow a child would find a circuit board out of an airplane and put it in its mouth and possibly get lead poisoning. So, hello, McFly. Hello. That's why nothing's dependable anymore. Everything has a time when it becomes obsolete, pre-planned obsolescence. So my boss was very brilliant, and so I would write the order from this chicken scratch to what's called CAD. CAD is computer aided design. Then my supervisor, my boss, would look at it under a microscope and he would say, these traces are too close to each other. Let's do the circuit this way. And that way, even if it migrates, it won't cause a short circuit. And he never got any extra thanks or anything from anybody. He was he is a very brilliant man's man, you know, but, and tough. When I would do something that didn't occur to me, he would say, Will, even, even somebody walking along the sidewalk on the street would have known that. And here we're working with precious metals and chemicals and different layers of circuit. Oh yeah, somebody on the sidewalk would know all about that, I'm sure, you know. But he would rag on me, and I would go off in the bathroom and get all upset, and little hot tears would flow. But I only had 45 minutes of board to design it, and it was up to me to figure out what to put it on, how many boards to use, how to orient the board to get the most amount of cuts out of it. You know, all the while the phone's ringing and people are asking, questions about electronics and uh, ohm factors and all of this other stuff. Because in any circuit, you try and get the circuits equal. If you have a circuit with a long run and then you have a circuit with a short run, particularly in audio or anything like that, it does make a difference. And you have to make sure that the circuit doesn't pick up any hum. So it's got to have what's called a ground field that the traces run next to so that any capacitance is sunk to the ground field before it causes distortion and hum and all of this other stuff, you know. And then it goes from CAD to CAM, which is computer aided manufacture. And they put all the components on the board and they run it into a solder bath. Then they take it out and they put it on a flying circuit tester, and the thing goes and tests the circuits thousands of times on this $1 million machine. They used to do it by hand. They had to make up a dummy board and then run the circuit into the dummy board and make sure all the lights would light up like one of those operation games. Same kind of connectivity and simple way of doing stuff. But then as the boards got more complicated, because we always kept a sample board, and the boards from the 1960s and 70s had these hand traces, and they were very far apart, very crude. And then the newer boards were microscopic, so you spent your whole day looking into a microscope, which for the ladies in back was very tough. Thank God I didn't have to do that. But as I got sicker, walking back into the chemical part of the factory with the boiling chemicals and all, started to make me too ill to work the job. I really hated leaving that job. I really hated leaving that job because it was very prestigious. And I used to love to tell people that the once garbage collector who wanted to be a doctor wound up making circuit boards for NASA and Black and Decker and Rockwell and North and Naval Surface Weapons Center and I got this one circuit board and it was 12 layers and it said air conditioning cutout for a submarine. And I looked at the board and very obviously it was for the missile silos on the sub. And you could count the circles, the number of silos. And it was so that if you pre-program your targets, and if the sub gets attacked or something, somebody hits a big red plunger and the computer takes over and ends the world from there. And it fires off the missiles so they don't rock the submarine and blow it up. And they, yeah. So old Pop Pop had his part in like that Twilight Zone, Third from the Sun, where the guy tells his daughter, "I'm just a cog in the wheel, and it won't be all my fault that millions of people suddenly get the 15,000-degree suntan and blow along the street like leaves on a fall day. Won't totally be my fault, but in Will's world and Will's wacky life, it's just one more circumstance, that I can blame on myself for having been part of this, part of the nuclear solution that they're trying to come up with in a few months to a couple of years. And even when I worked at CompUSA, I sold the military this. It was like a laptop, and they were very popular for a while. They were laptops that were half size, and you opened them up, and there was a little micro keyboard. And I told the guy, I said, "This thing is so expensive, no regular customer would ever buy it." And the guy said, "Well, we're putting it in the nuclear locker, and if push comes to a shove, we can launch everything using your little laptop." And I was like, "Well, gee, thank you so much that I'm responsible for my part of WW3 there again." But they never used it. So it was just more wasted money on a very expensive laptop at the time. And I had I had scrimped and saved, and CompUSA had this thing called the cage, where if somebody returned a laptop and the packaging wasn't right, they just dumped it in the cage. And so I would go through the cage every week and look and see what particular goodies were there. And there was this one laptop, and it was very well configured, and it was like $400 marked down. So they didn't have all of the parts to sell it. I was like, well, I'll buy the thing and hand pick the parts and put it back together, have myself a nice laptop. And so I'm sitting at my desk, and these two men come in, like the two men who visited Scrooge on Christmas Eve. So the two men come in, and they're standing there with their belly buttons at my nose. And I said, "May I help you?" And they said, "Yes, your boss told us that you wanted to donate a laptop to the American Red Cross." And I was thinking to myself, "Oh no, he didn't." So what can you do? Not wanting to embarrass myself or the company, I had to go get my laptop. I had to pay for it. Then I had to get the rest of the parts and pick out a case for it and a plug and all this and give it to these two people. I never got a receipt. I don't even know if they really were with the American Red Cross. But yeah, so I guess maybe I should have checked, but I never was one of those people that had a very crafty mind. And so it never occurred to me that other people could be crafty and do the things that they do now that are very commonplace. Back then, back then you could buy a house with a handshake. The first house I bought, was $122 a month, bought on a handshake. 4-bedroom house on the wrong side of the tracks. So $122 a month for a 4-bedroom house. I looked up my father's house, which sold for 27,000 back in 1957, and now it's worth 1.9 million dollars because it's so close to the city. And when I was a kid, Bethesda still was farmland, and it still had cows out on Old Georgetown Road and peacocks, cows and peacocks, and it had a little country general store on Woodmont Avenue, and further down Woodmont, it had a hardware store, and then they had this antique. It had this antique store, and over the years, as they built up Bethesda, they could never get the lady to sell her house, which doubled as an antique store. So one day I go out to Bethesda and I see this house sitting on a pile of dirt with the driveway going out to, I think, Woodmont Avenue or Rosemont or one of them. It would have scared me to death because it had a 50 or 60-foot pit all around this house that was sitting up on this pile of dirt. And the lady refused to sell her house. And she survived eminent domain or whatever they call it because her house was a business. So when they built the skyscrapers, they had to build them all around this lady's house. And it reminds me of a story uh, about this guy who ran a small business, and this other man wanted him to sell out. He said no. So they built this great big shopping mall around this guy's small business, and they put grand opening. And then this guy very cleverly went and had a sign made for his small business that said main entrance, so that instead of going into the surrounding buildings, everybody would come and go into the smaller store first, which was a stroke of genius. But yeah, a lot went on in my life. My life would make a wonderful, dreadful B movie. A dreadful B movie. So I had my friend who worked for Vitro Engineering, I think it was called, and I lived with a Japanese lady, and I had a Dodge Dart. And when I answered the ad for the room, I didn't know the lady had was Japanese. So I had a sticker back then. I was very uh pro American and all that other stuff. And I had one of these stickers. Well, the Dodge had, I'm not giving me credit for it. The Dodge had a Buy American sticker on the back of the car. It said, if people bought American, we wouldn't have to beg for American jobs or something like that. I always bought a used car that had a sticker on it. So when Joyce answered the door, I made sure that I backed up to the car and scraped the sticker off of the back of the trunk of the car with my key, tearing the paint and everything off the back of the car. And I moved in with her, and she had these false teeth that she used to click around and run to the front of her mouth. And she never got dressed. She spent her whole day in a bathrobe watching horror movies, and she had walls and walls of horror movies. And in the morning, she got up and she made me rice, kimchi with Miracle Whip, and scrambled eggs because I was the man of the house. And the house is absolutely falling apart. It had brick veneer, and the brick was pulling away from the rest of the house. She didn't care. The lawn was 3 or 4 feet tall. She just sat there watching her horror movies. I don't know why I left. I left there and answered an ad from a German lady up in Mount Airy who turned out to be a cat hoarder. So I went from the frying pan into the fire. But I always bought a car that had a bumper sticker on it. And I bought a really cute Ford Fairlane convertible that my sister-in-law called Bumblebee. It was yellow with black top, from this guy from Dreyfus Brothers. Sold it to me. He drove all the way out to my place to get $50 for this 67 Fairlane convertible with 250,000 miles on it in 1971. So I actually had to go to the MVA because they said that I would have to pay the minimum tax of $450 on the car if I didn't have a letter from the Dreyfus guy explaining why he had sold me this beautiful convertible for $50 that had 250,000 miles on it. And it had a bumper sticker on the back of it from a radio station. So I was down in Silver Spring, and of course, you watch those movies like The Seven Dwarfs, and there's a car chase, and I'm down at Wayne Avenue and uh, Silver Spring visiting some of my peeps, and I went over to see them, and they made me a cup of giant freeze-dried coffee, navy bean soup, which was navy beans, water, and salt, and Fritos. And Sam said, "Hey, Billy, right on time. Got some," and they were older than God. "Got some navy bean soup and Fritos. Sit on down, Billy." And I sat down to white navy beans and water and salt with salty Fritos and giant coffee in a dirty cup that had not been washed with old people spit in the bottom. And so they're making me this meal. God bless them. God bless them. And Sam says, "Hey, Billy, how do you like your coffee?" And as I'm watching them pour the hot water into the freeze dried coffee into the spit, I told him, I said, "I like the coffee hot, Sam. I like it hot." And so I drank the cup of coffee down, and of course, the spit was gone by then. It had worked its way into the coffee. And about 20 minutes later, my fingers were as big as corn dogs from all of the salt. So I got back in the car, and I'm like steering the car with the palms of my hands because my fingers won't bend from the high blood pressure and the salt and the swelling, from the salty Fritos and the salty bean soup. And as just as I got down to the last bit of bean soup, they put another bowl full in front of me. Not wanting to offend them, I ate the better part of the half of the soup. And, it was really good. But now I got to go and puke, that kind of thing. So I get down to George Avenue and Columbia Pike, I think it was. And I'm sitting there and I see this man in the van and he's really eyeballing my car. And I think, well, he's reading the tag of the car. And I'm thinking, while I'm steering the car with the palms of my hands, have I offended this guy or did he think I was gesturing at him or something? So I slowly move over one lane, respectfully pass the car and go back into the lane. And the van goes boo and whips over to the left lane and comes back. And so I'm like, it's on now. So I'm like heading towards Tacoma Park. And I'm like, well, I'll lose him in the back streets of Tacoma Park. So I'm like weaving and bobbing and everything. And I get caught at the one last traffic light. I think it's like East West Highway going into Tacoma Park has got this one traffic light left. And the guy slams the van in park, opens up the door, and runs out of the van, running toward my driver's side door. And he grabs the driver's side door and he goes, "You're a winner." And I said, "What?" He says, "You're a winner in Sunshine 73's, giveaway. You have the bumper sticker. You get a free copy of," it was a free copy of Jesus Christ Superstar, or what was that other religious uh, gospel thing that was popular back then? Or Jesus Christ Superstar came in a black and brown cover. This was in a white cover. And it had the song "Let the Sun Shine In," or you know the Fifth Dimension song. Let me know if you remember what that was. But in any case, he chased me down in traffic over this blasted. No, it wasn't Joseph in the. No, it wasn't Joseph in the Technicolor Dream. It was this one that had Aquarius. This is the dawning of the age of Aquarius. And Aquarius is not a good sign. We recently went from Pisces, the fish, into Aquarius. Aquarius is all of the new age depopulation stuff that's going on. So it was more of the Illuminati using their code words and stuff to let us know that they were going to give us a smackdown. Anyway, fam, I got to go because I got to take my blood pressure and see if I'm still alive and see what medicines I can take to live another 45 minutes or so as I start to get that cardiac cough. I'll probably have to scrape my legs into the wheelchair and sit up for a little while. And I'm hungry. I want a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. It's hard when you're alone and you're handicapped and don't particularly feel well on a specific day. I'm grateful for all of you that pray for me. I'm grateful for all of you that send me the diapers and the piddle pads through my Amazon link. So I'm going to say a blessing over all of you, uh, and then I'm going to sign off. I pray that the Lord will bless you, keep you, make his face to shine upon you, bless you physically, emotionally, spiritually, financially. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Poppity Pops out.